So did the president go too far, or did the officer? Marc Lamont Hill is a Columbia University professor and a Fox News contributor. He's my guest now. Hi, Professor. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
All right, so this has exploded into a national controversy now. I mean, it's all anybody's talking about. It's viral online and so on and so forth because the officer is standing by his actions. His police department is standing behind him. Professor Gates is standing by his allegations and is demanding an apology, which the officer says will not come. And now, bizarrely, we have the President of the United States weighing in on it. Was he out of line, as somebody who was not a first-hand witness to the events that went down, to take a side and call these police officers' actions stupid?
Well, it is a bit unwise to start any type of analysis with, I don't know all the facts and I wasn't there, but the police were stupid. That's a bit troublesome. But I think what he said, and he followed this up today with another statement, is that it is somewhat stupid to arrest someone in their own home after there was clearly a mistaken identity or a situation where you thought the person could be breaking in,
all right,
and it turns out that they weren't.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. So he tried to clarify the remark, but he didn't. He didn't, Professor, because the police officer did not arrest that professor in his home. He arrested him on the porch after he claims the man was screaming at him and belligerent and wouldn't pipe down, and there were 7 people on the street who were looking at him, alarmed and not knowing where this was going. There's really no question that he was on the porch when this went down, not inside the home, so the president is wrong.
Well, he said he was in his home would be right. The preposition is wrong, but he was at his home. He was on his own porch. And Obama's point at the press conference the other day was, look, we would all be upset if we were stopped by police and the police weren't cooperative and the police were rude and so forth and so on. And so this is the starting point for this type of interaction, and that the police probably should have just let him alone as opposed to arresting him for disorderly conduct.
Again, all the assumptions that are in that statement, that the police officer was rude, according to who? The president's making a factual call that's very much in dispute. And your statement that we would all be upset, that's not necessarily true either. If the police came to my home and said that they had reports of a break-in and they wanted to see proof of ID and so on, I would show it to them. I'd be grateful they showed up to investigate, as would a Washington Post reporter who went through a story that was very interesting, talking about this exact same thing happened to him. He's white, his wife's black, and said the police weren't nice to him either. He's white. The police demanded his license as well. He provided it. They weren't kind. They were putting the flashlight in his face. He never once thought it had anything to do with the fact that he had a black wife. He had a thought that it had to do with police who have a difficult job and trying to do it.
Right. Well, let me respond to those 2 points. The first thing is, well, I happen to be right now responding to Gates' report because everyone has assumed that the police report is accurate and unassailable, when in fact Henry Louis Gates offers a very different story where the police were rude, where the police were uncooperative, where they refused to provide their name or badge information, where the police ignored his requests and walked right out of the kitchen without helping him at all. That's a very different story. And so I'm saying if that is what happened based on what Gates said, then it would be normal for Gates to be upset. And that's what I'm saying. Now, it's possible also that this particular Washington Post reporter wasn't upset, but I would certainly be upset if a police officer were flashing a light in my face and being rude. Gates himself says, look, I wasn't upset at the point where the police came. I showed them my Harvard ID. I showed them my driver's license. It's subsequent to that that the problem started. But then,
Professor, you know that the allegations are that then, and the Professor Gates admits that he brought race into it, that he started screaming, you're doing this because I'm a black man. This is what happens to black men in America. He came out, he made a comment about the officer's mama, and when the officer turned to leave, he had put a period at the end of the event and was leaving. That's when the professor followed him out on the porch, according to the police officer, and continued to shout at him. Now, listen, you know and I know cops have a dangerous job. And they don't like people who are out of control. They don't like to be shouted at. They don't know where the situation's going. They don't know the people they're dealing with. They need to be cautious. Who would antagonize a police officer, even if they were angry? If you're angry about the way a cop is treating you, you get on the phone, you call their supervisor after it's over. Do you behave like this, Professor?
Well, I don't necessarily concede that that's what happened. Again, that's what the police say. That's not what Professor Gates says. Professor Gates offered his own statement on theroot.com, which is very different than the one you just offered. But to answer your question, no, I don't think that we should antagonize cops. I don't think we should antagonize anybody. But the fact here is that Gates was the one who was being given a hard time. They knew exactly what they were dealing with Gates. He showed his ID. They knew he was a Harvard professor. They knew he was a homeowner. They knew he was on a cane. So I don't think there was any physical threat, and I don't think that there was any imminent danger. And so the police had the option of leaving something, and Gates followed him on the porch to get the information that the police officer refused to give him in the house.
That's one of the
according to the police officer.
But that's no. Even according to Professor Gates, the officer was on his way out of the house, and Gates followed him out onto the porch. The officer did not arrest him for home invasion. The officer was satisfied that it was Gates, that it was Gates's home. And by the way, this is a home that had been broken into while Gates was away. So the officer was satisfied this wasn't a break-in. He was leaving, according to both parties, when Gates followed him out onto the porch. But my question to you, Mark, is, you know, you and I are debating it, right? Because there's two sides of this story. Yeah. Where does the president get off taking a side? Do you know what this has done to law enforcement communities across this country? Do you know what it's done to race relations now? Now these cops have to worry, are they going to get skewered by the president of the United States in a primetime press conference if they behave in a way he doesn't think is appropriate?
Well, the president has a responsibility to deal with these matters. Now, of course, the president should do so with all the facts and all the evidence before he makes a determination. But if the president weren't saying anything right now, we'd say, oh, my God, how can the president, particularly a black president, not address the most pressing issue around race right now in America, the most pressing sort of hot topic in America, and the president's ignoring it. They say he's ducking race and dodging race. So now that he's dealing with race, people are saying, well, why is he talking about this? Law enforcement officers have a tough job. We know that. The president respects law enforcement. The president respects the jobs that they have to do. But sometimes law enforcement makes a mistake, and we need the president to intervene at that moment and say something.
You know what? No sooner do you make the comment about the president reacting to this, and in your view appropriately, than we get word from our White House correspondent. He has said something more. Marc Lamont, we appreciate you being here.